Chumley do something for God and country and go back to work?
That's a good one right there.
I'm gonna kick your butt, chum.
Can you threaten to kick me in a funnier way?
Rick Harrison, the iconic figure behind the hit reality show Pawn Stars, has spent decades building an empire in the pawn business. Known for his sharp negotiation skills and extensive knowledge of rare items, Rick turned the gold and silver pawn shop into a household name. But recently, the Pawn Stars world has been shaken by an unexpected tragedy. Rick's son has been sentenced to life in prison, a news that has sent shockwaves through the family and the show's fan base. This heartbreaking revelation has raised countless questions, leaving fans wondering how the once tight-knit family business could have taken such a drastic turn. Today, we delve into this shocking development and explore the toll it's taken on Rick, his family, and the future of Pawn Stars. Rick Harrison's journey into the pawn industry wasn't born from a desire for fame or fortune, but from necessity. Raised in a working-class family, Rick was no stranger to hard work. He dropped out of high school at the age of 17, opting to take a hands-on approach to life. With no formal education beyond his early years, Rick found his passion in the world of buying and selling. He didn't start in the pawn business immediately, but after a few years of dabbling in various ventures, he found his calling in the world of antiques and collectibles. In the early 1980s, Rick partnered with his father, Richard Oldman Harrison, to open the gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas. At the time, it wasn't the bustling landmark it would later become. It was a modest pawn shop, struggling to make ends meet. With Rick handling the day-to-day operations, they faced numerous challenges. In the beginning, money was tight, and profit margins were slim. Rick often loaned out more money than the shop made in a day. Yet, he kept at it, learning the nuances of the pawn business and the valuable skills of negotiation and valuation. Rick's father, Richard, was an old-school businessman, known for his no-nonsense attitude and strict principles. He instilled in Rick the importance of doing business with integrity and the value of a solid work ethic. Richard, who had served in the Navy and had years of business experience, taught Rick how to run a business based on fairness, respect, and honesty. However, it was Rick's own instincts and deep fascination with history that began to shape the shop into something special. He saw pawn not just as a transactional business, but as a way to preserve history. Each item that came into the shop carried with it a story, sometimes a tale of incredible rarity, sometimes a reflection of the past. From the very beginning, Rick understood the intrinsic value of items. For him, it wasn't just about making money, it was about understanding the deeper significance of the objects being pawned. Whether it was an antique or a rare collectible, Rick didn't just see items for what they were worth on the market. He saw the history and stories behind them. And it was this mindset that set him apart from other pawnbrokers. The idea was simple. Every item had a story, and Rick became passionate about uncovering those stories. The shop's early years were filled with challenges. There were days when Rick wasn't sure how he would pay the bills, but his determination kept him going. He expanded his knowledge of valuable items, learning about everything from rare coins to vintage guitars, and gradually built a reputation as someone who knew how to spot a hidden gem. Slowly but surely, the gold and silver pawn shop began to grow. What made the shop stand out was its authenticity. Rick wasn't just in it for the money. He genuinely loved the history behind the items he dealt with. He began to view the shop not just as a business, but as a way to protect and preserve valuable artifacts from the past. Customers came in not just to pawn their possessions, but to share their stories with Rick and his team. They didn't just walk out with money in hand. They left knowing that their cherished item would be respected and valued for its historical significance. Rick's work ethic and growing knowledge of rare collectibles earned him respect in the pawn community. As he honed his skills, he learned to negotiate better deals and build relationships with customers and collectors alike. It wasn't just about buying and selling, it was about creating a network, and Rick was doing just that. But even with all his progress, the pawn business was still a tough grind. It wasn't until 2009 that the shop received its big break, when the History Channel approached Rick to turn his shop into the subject of a reality TV show. What Rick didn't know at the time was that Pawn Stars would catapult the gold and silver pawn shop into the global spotlight, forever changing the course of his life and the life of his family. But even as the show gained popularity, Rick never forgot the principles that had guided him from the start. A genuine passion for history, a commitment to fairness, and a deep respect for the stories behind every item that came through the door. In 2009, a game-changing opportunity arose for Rick Harrison and the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop when the History Channel approached them with an idea that would forever change their lives. The concept was simple: create a reality show based around the day-to-day operations of a pawn shop. What Rick and his family didn't realize at the time was how this show would turn into a global phenomenon that would redefine the pawn business and make them household names. Pawn Stars premiered that year, and from the start, it captivated audiences. The premise was straightforward. Viewers would get an inside look at the world of pawn brokering, where people brought in items ranging from rare collectibles to everyday objects in hopes of striking a deal. What set the show apart was its authenticity. It wasn't just about transactions, it was about the rich history and unique stories behind every item. The charm of the show wasn't just in the antiques, but in the personalities that brought the shop to life. Rick Harrison, the no-nonsense businessman, became the face of the show. His sharp wit and vast knowledge of valuables made him an instant fan favorite. Alongside him was his father, Richard Oldman Harrison, whose seasoned experience in business and dry humor provided a perfect balance to Rick's approach. Together, they formed a formidable duo, with Richard often offering candid wisdom and Rick handling the day-to-day operations with authority. Their dynamic on screen reflected a unique blend of father-son camaraderie that resonated with viewers. Then there was Corey Big Hoss Harrison, Rick's son, who added his own flair to the mix. Corey's ambitious nature and desire to one day take over the business made him a central character. His often humorous and sometimes naive approach to running the shop added a relatable, youthful energy to the show. And finally, there was Chumley, the lovable, goofy friend who worked at the shop. Chumley's playful and sometimes clueless persona became a comedic highlight, providing much-needed levity to the more serious moments. Together, these personalities formed the heart of Pawn Stars, creating a blend of humor, history, and unpredictable moments that kept audiences coming back for more. The appeal of the show quickly became apparent. The rare collectibles, quirky customers, and unforgettable moments of discovery made for irresistible television. Every episode brought something new, whether it was an ancient artifact, a vintage car, or an unexpected showdown over pricing. The unpredictable nature of the shop ensured that each day was filled with surprises, and viewers loved the tension of watching Rick and his team haggle, assess, and sometimes walk away from what seemed like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As Pawn Stars gained traction, it didn't take long for the show to explode into a global sensation. The success of the show went beyond just ratings. It became a pop culture phenomenon. Viewers from all over the world tuned in to watch the dynamic personalities of Rick, Corey, Chumley, and Richard as they navigated the often wild and quirky world of pawn brokering. The show's ability to blend entertainment with history made it a unique offering on television, and it quickly became a staple of reality TV. Behind the scenes, Pawn Stars was evolving into something far more lucrative than anyone had initially anticipated. What started as a show about a small pawn shop in Las Vegas quickly transformed into a multi-million-dollar business. The popularity of the show brought an influx of visitors to the gold and silver pawn shop, turning it into a must-see landmark in the heart of Las Vegas. Tourists from around the globe flocked to the shop, hoping to meet the stars of the show and maybe even catch a glimpse of a rare treasure. The shop became as much of an attraction as the famous casinos on the Las Vegas Strip. But it wasn't just the shop itself that benefited from the show's success. The Pawn Stars brand began to expand, leading to merchandise, spin-offs, and even live events. The show's impact on the pawn business was undeniable. Pawn shops across the country began to capitalize on the popularity of the show, and what was once seen as a humble, niche industry became a thriving business model. People now looked at pawn shops not just as places for quick cash, but as intriguing spots to discover unique and valuable items, just like in the world of Pawn Stars. In many ways, Pawn Stars helped redefine the perception of pawn shops. What was once viewed by some as a shady business became a legitimate, entertaining industry, thanks to the show's authenticity and the way it brought history, personality, and high-stakes negotiations to the forefront. Pawn shops became more than just places for transactions. They became cultural touchstones, thanks to the success of Pawn Stars and its unforgettable characters. The rise of Pawn Stars marked not only a new chapter in Rick Harrison's life, but also in the broader landscape of reality television. What began as a simple concept soon turned into a global phenomenon, forever altering the way viewers thought about pawn shops, history, and the people behind the scenes. The journey from a small, family-owned pawn shop in Las Vegas to a world-renowned TV franchise was a testament to the power of hard work, a bit of luck, and a genuine love for the stories that items can tell. As Pawn Stars soared to success, so did the growing tensions within the Harrison family. What had started as a family-run business soon became a battleground for control, and at the center of it all was Rick Harrison's estranged relationship with his mother, Joanne Harrison. Their feud, which had been simmering for years, finally boiled over in a highly publicized legal dispute. In 2018, following the death of Rick's father, Richard Harrison, Joanne filed a lawsuit against her son, accusing him of breaching a contract and misappropriating family assets. The lawsuit centered on allegations that Rick had manipulated her into signing over her 51% ownership of the pawn shop while she was in a vulnerable state, shortly after recovering from surgery and undergoing treatment. Joanne claimed that she was pressured into signing over control of the business, and once she realized what had happened, she took legal action to reclaim her share. The lawsuit took a dramatic turn when Richard Harrison passed away, leaving behind an estate and a business worth millions. According to Joanne, Rick had failed to provide her with a full accounting of the finances, and she claimed that he had kept secret over $500,000 in cash and silver that his father had accumulated over the years. This claim added fuel to an already blazing fire, and tensions within the Harrison family reached a boiling point. Rick, for his part, vehemently denied the accusations, defending himself against what he called an unjust attack. In interviews, he suggested that his mother was being influenced by others with their own agendas. He also described how the legal battle had taken a personal toll on him, stating that it was difficult to face such an ordeal with his own family. However, the lawsuit wasn't just a personal matter. It had serious implications for the business. As the legal dispute dragged on, the gold and silver pawn shop faced mounting pressure. With both sides refusing to back down, it was clear that the family's business, once a thriving empire, was now at the heart of a bitter battle for control. The lawsuit demanded not only a full financial accounting of the shop's assets, but also sought to prevent Rick from using any of the funds that Joanne claimed were rightfully hers. As the case unfolded, it became clear that the emotional and financial stakes were much higher than anyone had anticipated. But the troubles didn't stop there. The COVID-19 pandemic dealt a heavy blow to the entire pawn industry, and Pawn Stars was no exception. In 2020, the gold and silver pawn shop experienced a drastic drop in revenue, going from generating over $1 million annually to just $37,000. The pandemic put a halt to tourism, and with fewer customers coming into the shop, the business struggled to stay afloat. Despite the financial setback, Joanne continued her legal battle, further intensifying the family's troubles. Joanne made legal moves to claim her stake in the business, pushing forward with her lawsuit, and demanding that Rick adhere to the terms of the family's agreements. The pandemic had already taken its toll, but the ongoing legal battle compounded the financial difficulties for Rick and his team. Behind the scenes, Rick was dealing with the personal turmoil of facing off against his own mother in court, while trying to keep the business afloat. As tensions between the family escalated, the financial stability of Pawn Stars was increasingly at risk. While Rick had turned the pawn shop into a global sensation, he now found himself in a battle not just for the family business, but for his reputation and relationships. The financial and legal strain had a profound impact on the business. The public nature of the lawsuit and the ongoing legal battles only fueled the growing perception that the family behind Pawn Stars was falling apart. What had once been an entertaining show about unique treasures and quirky personalities had become a drama-filled reality of courtroom battles and family discord. The lawsuit and the pandemic-induced financial struggles marked a turning point for Pawn Stars. The empire that Rick Harrison had worked so hard to build was now facing serious challenges. The legal disputes and financial setbacks tested the very foundation of the Harrison family's business and, ultimately, their legacy. It was clear that the world of Pawn Stars was not as secure as it once appeared, and the Harrison family would need to navigate these turbulent times if they hoped to keep their business intact. Chumley, one of the most beloved and comedic characters on Pawn Stars, has always been known for his goofy demeanor and endearing personality. But behind the scenes, his life has been marred by a series of legal and personal struggles that have left a lasting impact on both his career and public image. Over the years, Chumley found himself in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons, and the controversies surrounding him would forever change how fans viewed the lovable pawnshop employee. Chumley's first brush with legal trouble came in 2012, when he was involved in an altercation in Hollywood. TMZ reported that Chumley was caught on camera getting into a physical fight with a man, leaving the stranger bruised and bleeding. Chumley, however, maintained that he was simply acting in self-defense, claiming the other man had threatened him and his friends with a gun. According to Chumley, the fight had escalated quickly when the man began harassing them, and he acted out of instinct to protect himself and those around him. Though he wasn't charged with any crimes related to the incident, the altercation painted a more violent picture of the fun-loving, goofy Chumley fans knew on TV. While the 2012 altercation was troubling, it was the events of 2016 that would send Chumley's life into a tailspin. That year, he found himself facing serious legal consequences when his home was raided by Las Vegas police. The search was part of an investigation into an assault allegation, but what authorities discovered inside his home would be far more damaging. During the raid, police uncovered an alarming stash of illegal substances, including methamphetamine, marijuana, and Xanax, along with several firearms, some of which were unregistered. Chumley was arrested and charged with 20 felonies, including drug possession and firearm violations. The charges were severe, and the public was shocked by the news. For someone who had been a fan favorite for his comedic antics on Pawn Stars, this was a stark contrast to the image he had built on television. The charges, combined with the negative press surrounding the raid, had a profound effect on Chumley's reputation. Fans were stunned by the revelation that someone they had come to know and love on screen had been living with such personal demons. Facing a mountain of legal trouble, Chumley opted for a plea deal in order to avoid serving time in prison. He pleaded guilty to unlawful possession of a firearm, a felony, and attempted drug possession, a gross misdemeanor. In exchange, he was able to avoid jail time, but the damage to his reputation was already done. While the plea deal kept him out of prison, it did little to repair the public perception of Chumley. For many, the lovable pawn shop worker they had come to know on TV had been replaced by a man struggling with personal demons that were impossible to ignore. But Chumley's story doesn't end with his legal troubles. Beneath the surface of the headlines and the courtroom drama was a deeper struggle that had been plaguing him for years. Chumley, like many individuals, had battled with addiction, and his substance abuse problems had been a major factor in his downfall. The drugs and alcohol had taken a toll on his personal life and his career, and it became clear that Chumley was grappling with much more than just his legal troubles. Despite his setbacks, Chumley made a concerted effort to turn his life around. He sought help for his addiction, and over time, he worked hard to reclaim control over his life. The road to recovery wasn't easy, and Chumley has openly discussed his struggles with addiction and the impact it had on his relationships, his career, and his public image. His journey was a painful but necessary one, and he has since focused on becoming a better person both personally and professionally. The challenges Chumley faced off-screen were far more complicated than anything viewers saw on Pawn Stars. While the show had made him a star, it also left him exposed to the pressures of fame and the temptations that come with it. His struggles with addiction were a difficult chapter in his life, but it's a chapter that has shaped the person he is today. Chumley's story is one of redemption, resilience, and the hard truth that no one's life is as perfect as it appears on TV. The impact of Chumley's personal struggles extended beyond just his own life. His troubles with addiction and the legal battles he faced cast a shadow over his role on Pawn Stars, and it became harder for fans to separate the persona of the lovable sidekick from the reality of his off-screen life. His journey through recovery, however, has shown that despite the setbacks and controversies, there is always room for growth and change. For Chumley, this was a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming challenges, there's always hope for a new beginning. As Chumley continues his personal journey, it's clear that the lessons learned from his struggles are something he carries with him today. While his legal issues and addiction have been a major part of his story, they don't define him. Chumley's story is one of overcoming adversity, and it serves as a reminder that even the most difficult battles can be overcome with determination, self-reflection, and the right support system. Corey Harrison, often known as Big Hoss on Pawn Stars, is no stranger to the spotlight, but his time in the public eye has been far from smooth. While Corey initially seemed like the natural heir to the family business, his personal struggles and public scandals have often overshadowed his career, leaving him to navigate legal issues and a tarnished public image. One of the most talked about incidents in Corey's life occurred in 2012, during a wild night out at a bar in Jefferson City. Corey, who had been drinking heavily for several days, found himself embroiled in a scandal that would quickly make headlines. According to witnesses, things took a turn when Corey urinated in public and caused a scene by throwing a bar stool across the room. The incident resulted in him being kicked out of the bar, and the humiliation was widely covered by the media. While Corey later apologized for his behavior, the incident painted a troubling picture of his personal life. As someone who was expected to one day take over the family business, his actions that night raised serious questions about his maturity and ability to handle the responsibility that came with such a public role. In the aftermath, Corey worked to repair his image, but the event left a stain on his reputation that he would struggle to shake off for years. However, the bar incident was just one of many issues Corey would face. In 2021, he found himself caught up in another public controversy, this time involving a rental RV. Corey had rented an RV for a short getaway in the California desert, but things quickly went awry. The RV's owner, William Villano, claimed that Corey had failed to return the vehicle on time and that it had sustained significant damage. When Corey's assistant eventually contacted Villano, they claimed to have been in an accident and the RV needed to be towed. When the vehicle was finally returned, it was in far worse condition than anyone had expected. The RV's awning had been ripped off, and the inside was left a mess with empty bottles and debris scattered everywhere. Villano later claimed the RV was so damaged that he had to cancel multiple reservations, losing out on income as a result. The total cost of repairs was estimated to be around $30,000, but Corey allegedly refused to take responsibility for the damages. As the situation escalated, Villano filed a police report, and the media quickly picked up on the story. Once again, Corey was thrust into the spotlight, facing backlash for his actions. In response to the scandal, Corey issued a public apology, acknowledging that he could have handled the situation better. He explained that when he had rented the RV, there were issues with the vehicle that made it impossible to use, and he had it towed back in good faith, hoping the insurance would cover the damages. But despite his explanation, the damage to his image had already been done. The incident, along with the bar scandal, left many questioning his ability to manage both his personal life and the pawn business. But Corey's struggles weren't just limited to legal issues and public scandals. His health had also become a growing concern. As someone who had spent much of his life in the public eye, the pressures of fame, coupled with the demands of running the pawn shop, began to take a toll on Corey's physical and emotional well-being. At his heaviest, Corey weighed over 300 pounds, and he struggled with issues like fatigue and low energy. The stress of managing the family business, appearing on TV, and dealing with personal troubles made it even harder for him to focus on his health. In 2010, Corey made the decision to undergo gastric bypass surgery, a step that would drastically change his life. The surgery, aimed at helping him lose weight, was the beginning of a long and difficult journey toward better health. Over the next few years, Corey managed to shed over 100 pounds, a transformation that not only improved his physical health, but also boosted his self-confidence. However, the process was not without its challenges. The weight loss journey took a physical and emotional toll on Corey, and he had to work hard to adjust to his new lifestyle. The decision to undergo surgery was a pivotal moment for Corey, and it signified his commitment to taking control of his health. It wasn't just about losing weight, it was about making a long-term change to improve his quality of life. But despite the success of his weight loss journey, the pressures of fame and the pawn business continued to weigh heavily on him. The constant public scrutiny and the demands of being a reality TV star made it difficult to find balance and maintain a healthy lifestyle. Corey's transformation was a testament to his resilience, but it also highlighted the strain that fame and family expectations can place on a person's well-being. While his weight loss journey was inspiring, it underscored the challenges of managing personal health when living under the intense pressure of the public eye. For Corey, the journey was about more than just shedding pounds. It was about finding stability and peace in the midst of constant challenges. Despite the legal scandals, personal struggles, and challenges with fame, Corey's journey is one of growth and self-improvement. His public apologies and efforts to better his health reflect a man who is trying to navigate his complex personal and professional life. While his troubles have made headlines, Corey's story is far from over. It's a reminder that, despite the mistakes and obstacles, there's always room for change and redemption. And for Corey, the road to recovery, both personally and professionally, is just beginning. As Pawn Stars grew in popularity, it became evident that the show's focus began to shift. What started as a fascinating exploration of rare collectibles, antiques, and historical artifacts slowly morphed into something very different. Fans who tuned in to learn about the rich history behind valuable items and the art of negotiation found themselves increasingly drawn into the family drama at the heart of the shop. While the show's early seasons had centered on the unpredictable, exciting world of pawnbrokering, it soon became more about the personal dynamics between Rick Harrison, his family, and the cast. The shift away from authentic pawn transactions became glaringly apparent as the seasons went on. Pawn Stars moved from showcasing rare items to highlighting tension-filled family moments. Instead of simply focusing on the fascinating history behind each item that walked through the door, the show started to emphasize conflict, whether it was between Rick and his son Corey or the amusing antics of Chumley. While these moments provided entertainment, they began to overshadow the original charm of the show: unpredictable transactions and interesting customer stories. Along with the growing emphasis on family drama, fans started to notice that the pawn transactions themselves seemed less spontaneous and more scripted. What had once felt like a window into a real pawn shop was now starting to feel like a carefully crafted reality show. Viewers were no longer witnessing genuine deals being made in real time. Instead, many of the items appeared pre-selected, and the negotiations began to feel rehearsed. The natural spontaneity of the show was sacrificed for the sake of creating dramatic moments, which disappointed longtime fans who had tuned in for the authenticity of the original premise. This shift did not go unnoticed. As the show's formula changed, a growing number of viewers voiced their criticism online. Fans who once praised Pawn Stars for its genuine portrayal of the pawn business started to feel that the magic was gone. The chemistry between the cast members, which had been one of the show's most endearing qualities, was now overshadowed by the increasing focus on scripted moments and manufactured drama. The spontaneity that had made the show feel fresh and exciting was replaced by predictable plots and forced conflict. The growing dissatisfaction led to widespread discussions about the show's authenticity, with many fans accusing it of becoming just another reality show, driven more by ratings than by genuine interest in the pawn industry. One of the biggest sources of frustration for fans was the rise of pre-selected items. Over time, it became apparent that many of the objects featured on the show were not brought in by random customers, but were instead chosen beforehand. This revelation sparked outrage, as viewers felt that the excitement of discovering rare treasures in real time had been replaced by carefully planned setups. In addition to this, accusations of rigged appraisals began to surface. Some fans questioned the legitimacy of the items being valued, suggesting that the appraisers were inflating their estimates for dramatic effect. This added to the growing perception that Pawn Stars had lost its authenticity, transforming into a show more about spectacle than about showcasing the true workings of a pawn shop. While the show's authenticity was in decline, Rick Harrison sought to capitalize on Pawn Stars' success in other ways, launching a major business venture in 2013, Pawn Plaza. Located just steps away from the gold and silver pawn shop, Pawn Plaza was intended to be a retail and dining complex that would capitalize on the influx of tourists visiting the famous pawn shop. Rick's vision was to create a space where fans of the show could experience more of the Pawn Stars world, with themed restaurants, shops, and attractions. It was meant to be an extension of the Pawn Stars brand, offering fans a chance to immerse themselves further into the world of the show.